What happens when you take suburban professionals whose entire identity revolves around HOA rules and corporate meetings and place them on a floating resort where they control absolutely nothing? They don't relax. They try to overthrow the daily planner. Here are 12 documented cases of passengers attempting to aggressively micromanage a multi-million-dollar maritime operation. 1. Brenda, a retired homeowners association president from an affluent Chicago suburb, approached the guest services desk of a 4,000-passenger mega ship not with a question, but with a performance review. She had spent the first 24 hours of her Caribbean voyage meticulously analyzing the ship's printed daily planner, and she had determined that the cruise director lacked a fundamental understanding of synergistic event flow. Have you ever tried to explain basic maritime logistics to a woman wielding a red felt-tip pen and a clipboard? It is an exercise in profound futility. Brenda marched up to the marble counter, placed her heavily edited copy of the schedule down, and informed the terrified junior staff member that having the poolside Zumba class at 9 a.m., while the breakfast buffet was still operating at peak capacity, was a massive logistical failure. According to her color-coded diagram, Zumba needed to be moved to 11:15 a.m. The belly flop competition had to be pushed to Thursday entirely, and the morning trivia should be relocated from the schooner bar to the main atrium because the natural lighting was better for her concentration. When the staff member politely explained that the schedule was finalized weeks in advance and involved hundreds of crew members, Brenda let out a sigh so heavy it could have powered the ship's turbines. She didn't yell. She simply leaned over the counter, tapped her perfectly manicured fingernail against the paper, and offered a compromise. She said she was willing to personally oversee the transition, provided she was given a temporary staff badge and direct radio contact with the DJ. The situation escalated when Brenda, having been denied her badge, decided to implement Phase 1 of her plan unilaterally. At exactly 8:50 a.m. the next day, she physically dragged 3 heavy wet floor signs from a nearby restroom and created a barricade across the starboard entrance to the pool deck, successfully redirecting about 40 confused passengers in workout gear away from the Zumba class and straight into a seminar on arthritic joint relief in the library. When a security officer finally dismantled her makeshift blockade, Brenda simply shook her head in sheer disappointment, pulled out a small notepad, and loudly declared that she was docking the ship's hospitality rating by 2 stars because management was clearly resistant to constructive optimization. 2. Tell me, what goes through the mind of a woman who looks at a printed list of 60 free vacation activities and decides she needs to act as the supreme editor for 3,000 strangers? Deborah, a retired neighborhood watch secretary from Florida, felt the ship's daily planner was suffering from severe thematic bloat. In her view, the 2 p.m. men's hairy chest competition and the 3:15 p.m. ice carving demonstration were completely distracting from the 4 p.m. bridge tournament she was trying to organize in the card room. After guest services politely ignored her demand to trim the fat from the itinerary, Deborah took matters into her own hands. Armed with a thick, permanent black Sharpie, she approached the giant, glass-encased daily schedule poster in the main atrium. Since the glass was locked, she simply drew massive, aggressive black X marks directly onto the exterior glass over every single event she disapproved of. Next to her redactions, she wrote "Cancelled, go to bridge room" in entirely capitalized jagged letters. When a furious security officer caught her mid-stroke trying to cross out the evening magic show, Deborah didn't even flinch. She simply capped her marker, sighed heavily, and complained that if management had just used proper bullet points in the first place, she wouldn't have had to step in to provide editorial clarity for the masses. 3. At precisely 4:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, a woman named Carol decided the evening entertainment schedule was inefficient. She didn't want to walk from the Deck 7 theater to the Deck 5 lounge, so she demanded that the 8 p.m. Broadway-style musical and the 9 p.m. geography trivia be merged into one single 8:30 p.m. super event. She presented this idea to the theater manager as if she had just cured a major disease. She aggressively argued that the cast of the musical could simply sing their grand finale while simultaneously reading out questions about the capital cities of South America. When the manager stared at her in utter disbelief, Carol didn't back down. Instead, she took matters into her own hands by showing up to the front row of the 8 p.m. musical, equipped with a stack of laminated flashcards. Right in the middle of a highly emotional solo ballad, Carol stood up, locked eyes with the lead singer, and held up a card that just said, "What is the capital of Peru?" The singer, utterly bewildered, missed her cue, prompting Carol to aggressively whisper "Lima" into the sudden, agonizing silence of the theater, before sitting back down and marking a tally on her score sheet. 4. Patricia was the kind of woman who genuinely believed that a vacation was just a corporate project that hadn't been properly managed yet. She boarded a massive European cruise ship for a 10-day Mediterranean voyage, and within 48 hours, she had completely lost faith in the ship's administration. The Daily Planner, in her professional opinion as a former suburban wedding planner, was pacing terribly. She found the gap between the 1 p.m. ice carving demonstration and the 3 p.m. bingo utterly unacceptable. It was dead air, and Patricia despised dead air. So she went to the internet cafe, paid an extortionate per-minute rate to use a computer, and typed up a completely revised, unauthorized schedule for day 4. She named it Patricia's Optimum Flow Itinerary, printed 200 copies, and set up a rogue distribution desk on a cocktail table outside the buffet. I want you to picture the sheer panic in a cruise director's eyes when he realizes there is a shadow government operating on Deck 9. For about 2 hours, Patricia successfully handed out her flyers to unsuspecting seniors, confidently telling them that the 2 p.m. art auction was canceled because the paintings were tacky and had been replaced by a mandatory towel-folding symposium in the forward lounge. By 2:15 p.m., the art auctioneer was speaking to an empty room, while 70 confused passengers were packed into the lounge demanding swans made of Egyptian cotton. Security eventually tracked the flyers back to Patricia, confiscated her remaining papers, politely dismantled her makeshift desk, and gave her a stern warning about distributing unauthorized materials. The officers walked away thinking they had successfully neutralized the threat. But they had fundamentally underestimated a suburban Karen, denied her administrative rights. This is where the story takes a turn into pure tactical warfare. Patricia knew she couldn't print more flyers, so she went digital. Before the cruise even started, Patricia had joined a massive Facebook group for this specific sailing, which had over 800 members. She had the contact list. She immediately pulled out her iPad, opened WhatsApp, and created a massive broadcast group, adding hundreds of phone numbers. She didn't just send out a new schedule, she declared a state of emergency. She messaged the group claiming that a plumbing issue had forced the closure of the main dining room for the early seating, and that management had secretly moved dinner to the poolside burger bar at 4:30 p.m. She urged everyone to get there early to secure a table. The crew had absolutely no idea this digital transmission had happened until exactly 4:15 p.m., when a stampede of 400 hungry, highly agitated passengers descended upon a single, terrifyingly unprepared grill chef who was just trying to clean his spatulas. As the food and beverage director sprinted across the deck, desperately trying to understand why half the ship was demanding cheeseburgers in formal wear, Patricia was sitting peacefully on a lounger on the deck above. She wasn't eating. She was simply looking down at the chaos, checking the time on her silver Michael Kors watch and making a tiny check mark in her notebook, entirely satisfied that she had finally fixed the ship's afternoon lull. 5. It is a fascinating psychological study to watch a woman from an upscale Ohio neighborhood try to apply local PTA meeting tactics to a maritime food and beverage operation. Beverly reviewed the ship's daily planner on Monday and decided that scheduling the afternoon tea service at 3:30 p.m. was a complete disregard for traditional etiquette, which she had learned entirely from watching historical British television dramas. She informed the food and beverage director that the event needed to be pushed back precisely 45 minutes to allow for proper afternoon digestion. When he politely declined her request to alter an event catering to 2,000 people, Beverly didn't file another complaint. She implemented a filibuster. At 3:15 p.m., as the catering staff began rolling out the massive carts of scones and sandwiches into the Horizon Lounge, Beverly positioned herself directly in the center of the only set of double doors leading into the venue. She dropped her designer handbag on the floor, sat down in a sturdy wooden chair she had dragged from the library, and crossed her arms. Whenever a waiter tried to push a cart past her, she simply raised her hand and calmly stated that the venue was under an administrative hold until 4:15 p.m. She managed to block 3 separate pastry carts and a terrified harpist for 22 minutes before security arrived to find her loudly lecturing a junior waiter about the historical inaccuracies of serving clotted cream before the golden hour. 6. Do you honestly believe that a multi-million-dollar entertainment schedule, planned 6 months in advance and involving 50 international performers, can be overthrown by a woman armed with a clipboard and sheer suburban entitlement? Joanne, from a gated community in Dallas, certainly thought so. On day 2 of a 7-night Alaskan cruise, she determined that the dual evening theater shows, scheduled at 7 Corsica p.m. and 9 Morissac p.m., were splitting the audience and ruining the communal energy of the vessel. Her proposed solution was a single mandatory performance at exactly 8:17 p.m., a time she calculated would perfectly accommodate the early diner's dessert course and the late diner's pre-show cocktails. She brought her proposal to the entertainment director, complete with a pie chart she had drawn on a beverage napkin. When he gently explained that a single show physically couldn't fit 2,000 passengers into an 800-seat theater, Joanne accused him of lacking spatial creativity. Refusing to take no for an answer, she launched a full-scale grassroots lobbying campaign. Joanne spent the entirety of day 3 aggressively canvassing the pool deck. She approached unsuspecting passengers relaxing in the hot tubs and presented them with a petition to optimize the theatrical flow. When people hesitated, she utilized classic manipulative tactics, warning them that if they didn't sign, the ship might replace the Broadway-style musical with a mandatory 3-hour lecture on maritime knot tying. By dinner time, she had amassed 400 signatures from sun-drunk, confused tourists who just wanted her to stop blocking their sunlight. Joanne marched the soggy, sunscreen-stained clipboard to the guest services desk, slapped it onto the counter, and demanded they immediately reprint the daily planner to reflect the will of the people. The situation only ended when the hotel director randomly selected a signature to verify the demand, called the cabin, and spoke to an elderly gentleman who entirely believed he had just signed a waiver to receive an extra lobster tail on formal night. 7. There is a very specific type of suburban high school administrator who cannot physically comprehend a world where a bell doesn't ring at their exact command. Francine, a retired principal from Illinois, found herself deeply troubled by the ship's morning trivia schedule. The daily planner listed the general knowledge quiz at exactly 10 a.m. in the schooner bar. The problem? Francine's preferred made-to-order omelet station in the buffet always had a massive line at 9:45 a.m., meaning she would inevitably miss the first 3 questions. She approached the young cruise staff member hosting the game and firmly instructed him to hold the trivia until 10:40 a.m. moving forward. The staff member laughed, assuming she was making a dry joke, and started the game exactly on time. This was a critical miscalculation. Francine did not make jokes. She made policies. The following morning at 9:30 a.m., while the trivia host was setting up his station, he stepped away for 60 seconds to grab a glass of water. Francine seized the opportunity. She marched up to the wooden podium, opened the binder, and confiscated the master question sheet, the stack of cards, and all 75 miniature golf pencils. She neatly placed them into her floral beach tote, left a sticky note on the microphone that read, "Event rescheduled to 10:45 a.m. due to dining conflict," and calmly took the elevator up to deck 11 to order her spinach and feta omelet. Just pause for a second and try to comprehend the sheer, staggering arrogance required to steal the operational supplies of an international cruise line just so you don't have to rush your breakfast eggs. Francine returned to the schooner bar at precisely 10:45 a.m., triumphantly carrying her tote bag, entirely expecting to find a room full of people sitting in silent, obedient anticipation. Instead, she walked into a completely finished event, where the cruise staff member was already handing out plastic gold medals to a group of seniors, having simply pulled up a list of trivia questions on his smartphone and told the audience to write their answers on cocktail napkins. 8. There is a terrifying breed of 30-something lifestyle influencers who view the physical rotation of the Earth as a personal insult to their aesthetic. Ashley, a passenger on a major American cruise line, summoned the assistant cruise director to the pool bar on day 3 to discuss a critical error in the evening itinerary. She was furious that the Sail Away Sunset Deck Party was scheduled for 5 p.m. According to her weather app, true golden hour didn't start until 6:12 p.m., meaning the ship's current schedule was forcing her to photograph her pina colada under harsh, uncomplimentary mid-afternoon light. The assistant director, holding a walkie-talkie and looking incredibly tired, explained that the party was timed to coincide with the ship actually sailing away from the port. Ashley countered this fact with a deeply confident hair flip. She suggested that the captain should just wait by the dock for an extra hour and 12 minutes, or, alternatively, they could simply reprogram the daily app to tell all 3,000 passengers to stay inside their cabins until the lighting improved, when she was told the departure time was dictated by international port authorities. She rolled her eyes, asked if there was a manager she could speak to at the ocean, and spent the entire 5 p.m. party standing directly in front of the band, holding up a large cardboard piece of white poster board to bounce better light onto her face while glaring at the trumpet player. 9. Consider, if you will, the monumental ego required to look at a multi-million-dollar entertainment schedule and decide that the entire musical rotation of a megaship needs a suburban corporate restructuring. Valerie, a notoriously aggressive homeowners association president from a gated community outside Atlanta, boarded a brand new vessel and immediately found the evening acoustics unacceptable. The Daily Planner listed a jazz quartet playing in the lobby bar at 7 p.m., an acoustic guitarist on the promenade at 8 p.m., and a salsa band in the upper atrium at 9 p.m. In Valerie's mind, this staggered schedule was a complete failure of auditory synergy, and she firmly believed all live music should simply happen simultaneously at 8:30 p.m., so she could enjoy her evening walk without dead zones. After the cruise, director laughed off her demand to consolidate the musicians, explaining that mixing 3 different genres in an open space was a terrible idea. Valerie went entirely rogue. She didn't argue. She simply went to the ship's library, used a computer to type up an incredibly official-looking document titled Corporate Auditory Compliance Notice, and printed 3 copies. At 6 p.m., she put on a pair of sensible reading glasses, clipped a random blank security badge she found in her luggage to her blazer, and systematically approached the bands during their sound checks. She introduced herself as a regional acoustic auditor from the Miami head office and handed them the fake schedules. She calmly explained that due to a decibel routing error in the main entertainment grid, their sets were all mandated to begin precisely at 8:30 p.m., and any deviation would result in a contract review. Musicians on cruise ships are incredibly used to bizarre, last-minute corporate changes from people in blazers, so they didn't even question the woman with the clipboard. Valerie was absolutely thrilled with her administrative triumph, entirely unaware of the complex architectural layout of the ship. All 3 of these venues were located within the same open-air, multi-deck central atrium. There were no walls between them. At exactly 8:30 p.m., Valerie took a seat at a cafe table on Deck 6, ordering a Pinot Noir, fully expecting a beautiful, harmonious blend of background music to wash over her. Instead, she unleashed a sonic apocalypse. The jazz band started aggressively blowing trumpets for a Miles Davis cover, just as the salsa band unleashed a relentless barrage of heavy timbals, while the poor acoustic guitarist plugged his instrument directly into the main amplifier and cranked the volume just to be heard over the competing brass section. It was a terrifying, deafening wall of chaotic noise that echoed up 12 decks of glass and steel, vibrating the floorboards and causing confused passengers to literally cover their ears, grab their children, and abandon their cocktails. Here is the magnificent, absurd twist to Valerie's masterstroke. As the panicked cruise director sprinted into the atrium, desperately waving his arms at the 3 separate bands to shut down the cacophony, Valerie didn't realize her experiment was a failure. She genuinely thought this acoustic warfare was just how the bands naturally sounded when played at the same time. Completely offended by the terrible noise, she picked up her wine glass, marched straight up to the guest services desk, slammed her hand on the marble counter, and demanded to file a formal noise complaint against the cruise director for greenlighting such a chaotic, disorganized musical schedule, demanding he be fired immediately for lacking basic symphonic management skills. 10. There is a terrifying subset of 30-something lifestyle bloggers who genuinely believe the Sun is obligated to follow their personal editorial calendars. Khloe, a wellness influencer from Austin, Texas, was deeply offended by the operating hours of the ship's adults-only solarium. The Daily Planner clearly stated the glass-enclosed pool area was open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. However, Khloe preferred to do her guided breathing exercises precisely at 1 p.m., which was peak capacity. She complained to the deck supervisor that the presence of other adults disrupted her aura and demanded the solarium be closed to the public for a mandatory quiet hour. When she was ignored, Khloe dug into her massive canvas tote bag, pulled out 2 laminated signs she had completely fabricated at a local print shop before the cruise, and took matters into her own hands. At 12:55 p.m., she quietly walked over to the automatic sliding glass doors at the entrance, used a roll of heavy-duty double-sided tape, and slapped her signs directly at eye level. They read, "Critical chemical imbalance. Area closed for sanitation." Within 10 minutes, 70 relaxed passengers gathered their towels and evacuated the pool, assuming a biohazard incident had occurred. Khloe triumphantly locked the glass doors from the inside, laid down on the Premier Center lounger, and closed her eyes. She enjoyed exactly 14 minutes of absolute serenity before a fully equipped maritime emergency response team, wearing heavy rubber boots and carrying industrial bleach sprayers, overrode the locking mechanism and stormed the deck, entirely prepared to neutralize a toxic spill, only to find a woman in a designer swimsuit aggressively shushing them for ruining her meditation. 11. Can you imagine possessing the level of strict, municipal rigidity required to try and alphabetize a buffet line of drunk tourists? Ingrid, a retired civic administrator from Munich, found the ship's late-night snack schedule to be a chaotic disgrace. The Daily Planner listed the midnight buffet opening at 11:30 p.m. To Ingrid, allowing passengers to simply wander up to the pizza station from multiple directions was an invitation to societal collapse. She approached the head chef and demanded he install a zigzagging queue system based on cabin deck numbers. The chef simply handed her a slice of pepperoni and walked away. Ingrid, deeply insulted by this lack of order, decided to enforce her own infrastructure. At 11:15 p.m., she dragged 3 heavy velvet rope stanchions from a nearby closed specialty restaurant and placed them directly in front of the buffet entrance. Acting as an entirely unauthorized bouncer, she began intercepting the hordes of slightly intoxicated, hungry passengers, forcing them to stand in a single-file line against the glass windows. Whenever someone tried to step out of line to grab a quick bread roll, she would loudly clear her throat, point firmly at the carpet, and lecture them on the virtues of sequential dining. She successfully managed to corral about 80 confused, highly compliant adults into a perfectly straight line that stretched all the way back to the elevators. Ingrid stood proudly at the front, acting as the gatekeeper of the carbohydrates, thoroughly convinced she had saved the cruise line from utter anarchy. Her absolute triumph lasted exactly until 11:30 p.m., when she dramatically unhooked the velvet rope with a grand sweeping gesture, only to realize she had completely misjudged the ship's layout and had meticulously routed a line of 80 hungry people directly into the automatic swinging doors of the active dishwashing galley. 12. Have you ever witnessed someone accidentally orchestrate their own social destruction simply because they refused to wait an hour for a glass of champagne? Victoria, an elite-tier passenger who exclusively traveled with her own silk pillowcases, was entirely disgusted by the scheduling of the VIP captain's cocktail reception. The Daily Planner listed the exclusive, invitation-only event in the Star Lounge at 7 p.m. on Thursday. Victoria, however, had booked an 80-minute hot stone massage that ended at 7:15 p.m. She calmly instructed the concierge to contact the ship's bridge and asked the captain to push his reception to 10 p.m. The concierge, staring at her in stunned silence, politely explained that the captain's schedule was dictated by maritime duties, not spa treatments. Victoria considered this a blatant lie. Unwilling to accept defeat, she utilized her elite status to access the concierge lounge while it was empty, swiped a thick stack of official, gold-embossed cruise line stationery, and took it back to her suite. She spent 2 hours handwriting perfectly forged addendum notices, stating that due to operational changes, the VIP reception had been relocated to 10 p.m. She then spent the entire afternoon casually strolling down the hallways of the suites deck, slipping these elegant letters into the brass mail slots of all 200 elite cabins. Her sabotage was a logistical masterpiece. At 7 p.m., the captain stood in the Star Lounge in his pristine white uniform, surrounded by waiters holding trays of expensive champagne, staring at a completely empty room. Assuming a printing error had occurred in the main office, they packed up the event at 8 p.m. Victoria enjoyed her massage, took her time getting dressed in a magnificent black evening gown, and confidently strolled down to the Star Lounge at 9:55 p.m., fully expecting to be greeted by a string quartet and a deeply apologetic captain. This is where her master plan collided violently with the reality of the ship's late-night programming. Victoria had successfully rescheduled the elite passengers, but she had entirely failed to consult the actual daily planner for the venue's later events. At 10 p.m., the Star Lounge was not reserved for a VIP reception. It was the designated location for the heavily advertised Neon 80s Glow Party. When 200 millionaires, politicians, and corporate executives showed up in their finest tuxedos and evening gowns, expecting a refined speech from the captain, they were immediately hit by a wall of fog machine smoke and the deafening opening synthesizer notes of a Bon Jovi song. Victoria pushed open the heavy wooden doors just in time to see a hyperactive cruise staff member wearing a neon pink sweatband run through the crowd, aggressively throwing glow sticks at confused elderly billionaires. Because nobody had informed the DJ about the rogue schedule change, he assumed this massive crowd of furious people in formal wear was just heavily committed to a bizarre aesthetic, and he loudly commanded the entire room of horrified VIPs to form a giant conga line. Victoria spent the rest of her evening hiding behind a plastic palm tree, watching the very people she was trying to impress get pelted with inflatable guitars, entirely powerless to stop the synthetic musical nightmare she had personally engineered. What connects these stories isn't that cruise passengers are uniquely difficult. It's that sudden, unstructured time terrifies people used to strict routines. Without a calendar to dictate their worth, they panic and manufacture authority. The ship is just a massive, floating stage for their own profound discomfort with relaxing. Human nature doesn't take a vacation. It just gets louder.